Episode 4 of The Nuclear Deep End, an EMP Apocalypse episode series. Episode 5 is under construction. Like and subscribe so you don't miss it. Copyright Firefly 2023. Voiced by AI.
Chapter 10. After spending an hour talking to the people who are locked down in the mall, I have realized that there is more than just a little problem. To hear each person retell the same events, it almost sounds like a colonization, like a weird hostage situation. Our group is split on if and how we should go about trying to assist. I am just as conflicted. I want to help, but we have no weapons. I'm not even entirely sure we will get our weapons when we leave. From what I have heard, they like to take weapons from those who leave.
In the first few days, it was just a bunch of us who work here and the shoppers.
The boy who worked at the shoe store told me.
Most of the people left. I guess they were trying to make it home to their family. There were probably hundreds here when the power turned off. By the time we were slammed with the sound wave, we were at around 50 people. After the first day or two, people started leaving. My guess is they were hopeful the radiation isn't deadly. Oddly enough, other people started showing up. I would assume this seemed like a safer building than their home.
He said. The man on the weather radio was telling people to seek shelter in a sturdier building. That could have brought locals seeking shelter, or just in general the loss of safe shelter. I offered.
Yes, either way the locals started showing up. Then, the next thing I know, these rougher-looking guys started to turn up. I don't know what their problem is. They tried to organize security, in way of removing our firearms. He said people might be a little more on edge. From talking to everyone it would seem that they were the ones putting everyone on edge and we would just like our weapons back. I think most of us, myself included, would like to leave.
He said. I felt for this guy. If I were stuck in here, I would just want to leave too. I thought back to the first days. If we would have let those people into the restaurant, we would have not only risked contamination, but them taking over our group just like they did here. I guess it's a good thing we had to leave earlier than I had planned on us leaving. First, we never would have found Jessica, but we also may have run into people just like this. The ones who only take. We sat at our table quietly, only talking to those who approached us. It has been a wild ride in only an hour, and I don't think anyone in our group is looking to add to that. I knew we should have left and not entered on the side alone of the men standing in front of the doors. It just seemed off. If only we had known what we were getting ourselves into.
So, what can we do?
Alex asked.
Why do we need to do anything? Why can't we just leave? That was our plan.
Heels sneered. Wouldn't you want someone to help you? I asked.
You said we could follow you into the restaurant and I did. Other than that, no one has saved me. I made each decision myself, and they should too.
Heels shot back again.
Why are you in such a hurry to go? It's not like you are on your way home.
Jessica said to her, fire flaring in her eyes.
Why are all of you judging me?
Heels asked. Because you talk without thinking. I responded.
No, not even close. You all are trying to get me on board to take over a mall that is apparently controlled by the only men in here who have guns. This doesn't seem like one of those win-win kind of scenario. And to top it all off, we have already had the chance to save people. We could have opened the door and let those people in day one, if saving people were what we're doing here. Instead, we chose to step over their dead bodies. I am just confused why that is not an option now.
She glared at us.
I heard this quote once on a video game. It said, "Build to the sky, upon the backs of the dead." That's kind of like what we are doing here. We don't get to choose exactly what happens to people, but we can choose to help if that is a possibility. We can keep coming back to whether we should have opened the door or not. At the end of the day, we all, every single one of us, chose to not open the door. So, stop using it like something that only you regret. Without us, you would be dead.
Alex said. I have never seen him so worked up, and I have to admit this conversation is not going anywhere fast. How did we even get to this point? I noticed one of the guards walking over. I cleared my throat and looked back to Alex, then to the approaching guard. He followed my gaze. Good, I thought. So, tell me about that game you mentioned. I said to Alex.
What are you talking about? That is a complete waste of time.
Heel's whisper screamed her frustration.
Well, you were this guy in a world of dinosaurs, and you had to not only survive, but you also had to escape out of the massive jungle you were stuck in. The graphics were...
Alex let his voice trail off as the guard stopped by his side.
So, how is our new group doing? You all look like you have made some new friends.
The guard said, obviously noting that we have been talking to people from their group.
Yeah, just trying to learn who everyone is, and where they came from. An interesting group you have here.
Tony said in his most non-confrontational voice.
Yeah, we have a good group here. You all look like a strong group too. You should consider hanging around a bit. We will be putting together a scavenging party in the next few days. It would mean a lot to us if a few of you all could come along. Yeah, we have a good group here. You all look like a strong group too. You should consider hanging around a bit. We will be putting together a scavenging party in the next few days. It would mean a lot to us if a few of you all could come along.
I don't know that we can do that. We are in a bit of a time crunch. I have a wife who is expecting our first child. Our house is just east of Richmond.
Tony explained to the guard. I suppressed my smile. I called it day one. Tony was a bluffer. We all knew Tony didn't have a wife. I glanced at Heels, hopeful that she wouldn't blow our cover. She didn't say a word or bat an eye. Probably because she wanted to leave and this was the best shot we had. I have known Tony a week. He is not often keeping his cards so close. He also told them the roundabout location we are going, except he sent them the opposite way. In my mind this added up to, these guys were a threat and he was brewing a plan.
Richmond is gone.
The guard said flatly.
Oh, man! You're kidding!
Tony acted surprised.
What? We are walking this whole way, and it's not even there.
Heels broke her silence. We do not have time for this. I said to Heels. The main source of my irritation being her lack of ability to not fall into the trap laid by the guard. She will be the one who gets us killed. I wondered if they had a radio of their own. Either way, I don't believe this is true news. The guard was either testing us to see what we know or what we will trust.
I still have to try. I'm sure you understand. But with this new news, I think we had better sleep on it, if that's okay. In the morning we can take another vote and catch up with you if we have any changes to our plan.
Tony said.
You don't strike me as the voting type.
The guard said to Tony.
Well, not exactly, but a group of all women, what would you like me to do?
Tony said flatly. He must be trying to paint himself weaker. Not a bad play. He must be a fan of chess too. I bet a load of people have lost their life by not knowing how to read a situation. However, this one was clear, we need to get out, and these people also need to get out. I didn't exactly want to stay the night, but if there was a chance of us helping, we would need the time to plan. After a few more minutes of this weird tension-filled conversation, the guard walked away. Silence filled the void of conversation in the group. Me and Alex looked at each other and shrugged. Neither one of us seemed to have a plan. Well, I think our biggest problem is we don't know who we can trust, I said.
That's true, but I think I found us an opening. If they want a scouting party, we could go. It's not the best plan, a lot of unknowns and variables. Unfortunately, I do not get the impression we are free at any point to get up, walk past the 2 guards standing by our only known exit, collect our things and leave. So, we might need to test a few limits, find a weak spot. This isn't an armed militia, it's a few power-hungry idiots with guns.
Tony said. Why would we volunteer to do something dangerous? I asked, not exactly following.
Well, we can't stay, that is a given. If we plan to stage a coup, we will need either way more weapons or people. We can tell the guard that we are sorry we can't stay, but we would like to help since they helped us. I think that is what the guard was getting at when he mentioned the scavenging party. I think he was fishing for a reaction. If we can beat him to the punch and offer before we are asked or told, I think that will build trust. With guys like this, you have to play their game by their rules. We might be able to get help out there, or find something to help us. I couldn't imagine this guy would come with us. He doesn't exactly strike me as a strong leader. He will probably stay in the safety of the mall, while others do the dangerous stuff. It's the only way these cowards will make it.
Tony elaborated on his plan, and so far, I think he is right.
Well, I'm not going.
Heels said.
Good.
Tony said to her with a smile.
Are there any volunteers for going on our own scavenging party?
What do you need volunteers for?
The kid who worked at the shoe store asked, as he took an open seat at our table. I didn't see him walk up, but I bet he is interested in what our conversation was with the guard. I don't mind sharing, he seems like a good kid. However, the lack of privacy, everyone here in the wide open like this is going to be a challenge.
We are putting together a search party as a thank you.
Tony said, still holding his cards close. I would like to think we can trust the kid. I think if we make a solid plan, then we can share. Until then, we are leaving ourselves open to negative outcomes for no reason.
That could be helpful, but we need to get out. Are you planning on escaping when you go out to scavenge? He won't let your whole group go. Probably just the men, and if you do run, he will chase you. Not to mention he will have hostages.
The boy said. I would assume this is why people won't just leave. Sounds like this has been a repeating pattern. Wonderful, I thought to myself. A vengeful psychopath. That's exactly what the world needs right now, one more loser preying on people who are less prone to violence. I thought it would have taken more to break people down to this level. I guess it doesn't take much in this world. I would assume we could trust the kid though. He has been here from the beginning. I couldn't decide if I wanted to say more. As of right now, I would say we are already in over our heads. Has anyone gone missing, or anyone who seemed to just randomly leave? I asked.
A few. They were here when we went to sleep but not when we woke up. If I had to guess, I would say they made a run for it. I just never liked the response to the missing people. It always seemed like a joke. Like they knew more than they were letting on.
He said.
Well, you don't have to worry about us. We are not making a run for it or anything. We would just like to improve the conditions around here, before we go.
Tony said.
You better bring back guns then, or we will all be stuck.
He responded.
If we were lucky enough to find them, we wouldn't be able to get them in undetected.
Tony said.
You can leave them in the dressing room. I'm sure they will search it after you leave, but if you hide them well enough, like in the ceiling tiles, We could go in after lights out and get them. You bring them in, hide them, and I will make sure they get into the right hands.
The boy said.
Are you prepared to kill a man?
Tony asked the boy, glaring into his eyes.
A man, I don't know, but these men are monsters. I can kill a monster.
He said back without breaking eye contact. From this one interaction, I would say that he is capable. I was a little frightened of the look in his eyes. I wondered what he wasn't telling us. Something bad has happened here, but I didn't know what, and no one seemed to be willingly giving out that information. Should we see if we can go look around? I asked the group.
What are we going to be looking for?
Alex asked. Well, if we are going out, we need to know what they have and what they need. I said.
Yeah, that I can see being helpful.
Alex said. I also can't shake the feeling that we don't have the whole story. We need to make sure there aren't any surprises. I said.
Okay, I'll go talk to the guard about our plan to go scavenge. Who would like to go? Obviously, we can't take everyone, but we could use more info so those who are left here will be in charge of getting more intel.
Tony asked. It didn't take long to establish the group of Tony, Jessica, and myself for scavenging. That left Alex and Heels behind. I hated that was the case. If something happened to Alex, I would never be able to forgive myself. But I don't think we are all getting out of here without a few risks. From the second that they saw us, we were at a disadvantage. If we can get out of this, we need to move completely off the radar. People have lost their minds. Tony made his way across the cafeteria to the guard standing by the employee entrance. This is the only way in and out. It doesn't exactly sit well with me that the only exit is being guarded. I watched Tony talk to the guard out of the corner of my eye. It seems like everything is going well. Man, these guys are so self-absorbed they cannot see the bigger picture. That is their weakness.
Apparently, it will be dark soon. Something about all the crap in the air, so he thinks it's best we don't go looking around. We are adults who have flashlights, but I resisted the urge to point that out to him. We have to play this 100% by their rules. So, everything that they say we need to act like it is a good enough reason. Really play to their ego, you know what I mean? Anyhow, he seemed overjoyed about the idea for the scavenging party. I would say it's a go. I don't have much more of a plan than that. Depending on what we can find tomorrow, we can make a plan.
Tony said.
But how will you know what to look for?
Well, if we are looking for anything, we might find more than if everyone is looking for one thing. We need to be resourceful and creative. We will get a few duffel bags. One of the bags can have another bag in it. This way, if they count our bags on the way in, we don't come up short. We leave the additional bag in the tiles and figure out how to get it back.
Tony responded. We should find somewhere to settle in for the night. If we look like we are staying, more people might come introduce themselves. We might be able to get a better idea of what exactly is going on here. I said. Chapter 11. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else. Well, no one was up walking around at least. I stayed in my seated position with my back pressing against the wall. It was an uncomfortable way to sleep, to say the least. We were all seated side by side, resting our heads on each other. A few people were nice enough to offer us pillows and blankets from some store in the mall. We didn't accept for two reasons. The first being that we have no way of knowing if this particular merchandise was under an air vent in a store, or if someone from the outside had come in contact with it before decontamination was set up. The risk of breathing one single particle is too high. Not to mention we would be breathing in said particles throughout the night. The second reason being that we don't know anyone here, or what their motives are. But I can tell you I am not accepting anything I do not know the price of. What if they would like us to compensate them for their hospitality? It has been made clear there are no longer any rules. People can change things to be any way they pleased now. It's better not to accept things you don't know the price of. Working with people is always to your advantage. But you must be selective of who you work with. I trust my group. I don't think anyone would do something stupid intentionally. But right now, I am more worried about getting to the people who I know I can work with. We will do what we can, but in the back of my mind I have my own backup plan I have not mentioned to anyone. If things go sour and we need to make a rushed escape, I can ignite the gas stoves, blow out the far south wall. It might hurt people, that's why it's the last choice. Honestly, this might be one of the safest buildings in the area, well that is, if the new militia-style group was not here. So, finding something on the scavenging run is our best option. A few weapons would be nice. A smaller fire could distract the guards, allowing a team to get the bag. Hopefully this will go smooth as butter. Food and water are also something I would like to bring back for the group. I don't know what their situation is here, and I haven't wanted to ask. I wouldn't want them to think we were like the other group and only interested in what they have. The positive side is we are guaranteed to find weapons. It's mostly houses around here and they will all have kitchen knives. Hand-to-hand combat isn't really my style and we don't know how many people they actually have with them. Tony lifted his head off of my left shoulder. Had he just woken up, or had he been taking in the morning too? It's a good opportunity to observe. All of last night it was hard to think straight with the weight of everyone's eyes on us.
Doesn't seem like anyone else is up.
He whispered. I noticed I have been thinking about some different options and things we might find. I wonder how many people they will expect us to take with us, like from their group. Clearly they aren't going to let us go unsupervised. I said.
I have been putting some thought to that as well. I think our best option is going to be to split up. The less people keeping eyes on each one of us, the better. Chances are they won't want to do the dirty work anyhow. So, if they are standing guard, we can slip things past them. We need to be extremely careful, no risks.
He said. I know, you know those gas stoves in the kitchen do not take any tech to get them going? We could turn a few burners on, granted we would need to figure out how to light the gas without being part of the explosion. But a solid second option I have been considering. I said.
Yeah, the worst case scenario. However, we can make a big show of some of the food we get tonight. Use the stoves to cook on. Start a fire. It would give us a chance to gain a little ground on the group of outsiders. Shake them up a bit.
Tony said. I nodded but didn't respond. I liked that he and I were on the same thought. A fire would cause some damage but nothing catastrophic. The explosion is a good ace to have if we need to run out the front door. If we can find the right stuff to help us out, a distraction is more reasonable than destroying an otherwise safe structure. After deciding to keep the outline of our plan to ourselves, we waited quietly for the cafeteria to come to life. Leaving a few people behind while we went out scavenging meant that we could not be there to stop them from giving away too much information. We would tell Jessica since she was going with us. It would help if she knew the plan so that she knew what items would be more helpful. Even though things were bleak, I am starting to feel a bit more positive. It only took about half an hour for people to begin to stir and move around. Not too long after, the pleasant smell of coffee hung in the air. I wonder if that is a general free offering. I wondered if they did breakfast how they did dinner. Last night a group worked together to feed everyone. I guess that would be a good way of keeping equal shares of food between so many people. Tony and I both slowly pulled ourselves out of the sleeping chain, jostling Alex and Jessica awake.
Where are you two going?
Jessica asked, stretching. To find out about the coffee, I said. That must have been enough for them to disturb Heels in her slumber. They were up, and Heels came around quickly to the smell of coffee. It's funny how our brains are wired. As we walked over to the small crowd, I made a mental note about pulling Jessica aside to fill her in on the plan. We found the source of the aroma close to the front of the cafeteria. Two of the food stalls had lines of people coming from them. It looked like one for coffee and one for food. As soon as we reached the front of the line, the guard's voice filled the cafeteria.
How did the psychotic man get a blowhorn? I guess from a manager's desk. The metal must have shielded it from the EMP.
Tony whispered. The lady handing me a cup of coffee smiled.
Thank you for your attention. Our visitors have offered to go out on our scavenging trip. This being said, we are planning on leaving this morning. The assigned group for Tuesday will still go out as planned. We will be leaving in 1 hour, so eat up. We will be randomly selecting a team of 3 to aid them on the trip, so everyone on the scavenging team be ready to leave in the case your name is selected.
The guard's morning announcement ended as abruptly as it started.
Does he do that every morning?
Heels asked.
Yeah, this morning was short. Sometimes he can really just babble up there about doing the right thing and respect. It's like he thinks he's the king of them all.
Shoe Boy said as he smiled to the woman serving the coffee for our line.
He seems like a real jerk. Just
Tony
like I
said.
thought.
Do you know anyone on the scavenging team? I asked him.
No, that's all the people that seem to be with him. Or at least close to the inner circle.
He responded.
Just like I thought.
Tony said.
Let's just get breakfast like normal. We can't do anything differently than we said we were going to. We knew it was a strong potential. Now it's just a guarantee we will have babysitters.
The hour before we left moved quickly. No one came over to talk to us. I guess if they were worried about us having a plot, they did not want to incriminate themselves by looking close beforehand. I don't blame them. Later, when we know we have a solid escape plan, we can include who is needed. If we go out and come in business as usual, they will most likely let down their guard a bit.
Can I have your attention? I am going to call the names of those who are going to accompany the visitors. I need everyone in the party to make their way forward. James Thacker.
The guard continued to call names. I looked around the room to see if I had talked with anyone who was called. None of them looked familiar. Once the names were called, Tony stood, Jessica and I followed. All 6 of us bunched up around the entrance to the employee area. The guard looked at the 6 of us.
We are going to send you out of the decontamination rooms. If there is anything in your bag you would like to take with you, you may collect it when you pass through the locker room. You will be searching in teams of 2. Each of my men have a list of items to look for and locations to go. You will leave a few minutes apart, just to be sure there isn't an ambush outside of the gates. Otherwise, have a good trip.
The guard said, smiling eerily. We were all silent while walking through the long hall with the glass ceiling. You could see a brightness from the sun through the thick haze in the sky, but I swear it is getting darker by the day. I wonder why that is. Could bombs still be going off? Were things just cooling and settling in the atmosphere? I would give anything to be a scientist right now. My thousands of years in the making survival instincts tell me this is ominous of darker times ahead, like nuclear winter. I couldn't get the thought out of my head. How much time would we have and how cold would it get? I chewed this over in my mind. It kept me looking occupied without throwing off the element of our group. Tony leaned close to Jessica briefly. I am assuming he got her up to speed as quickly as possible. The challenge would be these guys on the way back in, somehow we need to pull off hiding our part of the supplies. Tony and his babysitter was the first group to go. A few moments passed before I was instructed it was my turn to go. My babysitter was a middle-aged man. His scruffy blonde hair was curling out from his beanie. I would guess from his general everyday attire he was probably here when everything went down, and somehow he ended up on the wrong team. Then again, he does also look like he could have been one of the rougher ones to wander in later on. It's hard to figure people out. I'm usually fantastic at reading a person, however with the stakes so high, I'm not so confident. Once we cleared the fence and made our way into the parking lot, 2 bags were thrusted into my chest.
We were given 4, we are expected to fill 4. I would assume you are capable, seems how you each carried in 2 yesterday.
He said without looking my direction, simply extending his arm with the bags. So, there was more people watching when we first arrived. They might be a bit more organized than we have thought. If we had turned away, we most likely would have been followed. I would assume they have been out a lot. They did not put on suits anything like what we put on. They must think because they are not getting sick now, no damage is being done. Unfortunately, I believe this is how so many would go. The false idea that all radiation induces immediate illness. I looked around for Tony as we walked forward. I hung a half step back, allowing the guy to lead. Neither of us spoke. Either he is also the quiet type or he is quiet to avoid people. I was fine with that. We meet back up with Tony at the end of the parking lot. They were crouched down in front of a delivery truck. I looked at him and shrugged. He passed it back. We both turned our attention to the way Jessica should be coming from. Once we all got to the delivery van with no indications of a threat, the scraggly hair guy motioned us to follow him as he made his way to the left. We walked by the neighborhood I would assume we are going into. We passed it on the way in and didn't see anyone there, so I felt a bit more relaxed. We passed through the main entry of the neighborhood and walked past the first street.
We are going to take every 3rd house. Hopefully we can get the bags filled in a few houses.
The man wearing the beanie said.
What is on the list to get?
Tony asked.
All medication, food and water. Otherwise, things that are either valuable or useful. The
same babysitter answered. None of us said anything else. Sounds like they plan to clean this place out house by house. I hope no one is home or planning to come home. I wondered if people were doing the same at my house. I didn't think so. My neighborhood was a lot closer. We broke off in groups of 3s, fanning out to the first 3 houses. The house we walked up to was all white and trimmed in blue. It was a cute, small house. Did it look like a gun owner's house? What does a gun owner's house even look like? The walkway to the front door had dead flowers sprawled across the dirt. Were they dead before, or is it that deadly out here? Standing on the porch, I looked to the guy. Should I knock? I asked.
If it makes you feel better.
He responded. The way he said it gave me the impression we were going in, like it or not. I knocked 3 times. Nothing except silence. I grasped the knob. Locked. I said.
Looks like you are going in through a window then.
He said flatly. My heart sunk, but I managed to keep a straight face. I turned away from the door and walked to the front of the house. I examined the front-facing windows. They were close enough to the ground to get in. If the radiation did not kill all the spiders, I might get covered in them from the bushes.
We don't have all day.
He called out. I picked the right window. While they were both the same distance from the ground, I would assume the floor plan in a house like this one would have the kitchen on this side, and climbing in onto a counter would be a lot better than flopping onto the floor. Not to mention, if any window was unlocked, it's probably the kitchen. I am by no means a master burglar, but I have locked myself out of the house more than once. I carefully stepped behind the waist-high bush, careful not to rip my suit. I stood on my tiptoes to push the window up. It slid about 4 inches before I couldn't reach to continue pushing it open. "Either find me something to stand on or come give me a boost," I called. The guy picked up one of the chairs from the porch and carried it over. He must not have liked being bossed around, because he sat it down and went back over to the front door and glared at me. I scrambled up onto the chair and shoved the window the rest of the way open. I asked one final time to not have a gun in my face on the other side of this window. I grasped the window seal and hoisted myself inside. To my relief, there was no gun, and I was right that this was the kitchen, though climbing in onto the counter was not as easy as I had imagined it in my mind. I'm sure the guy on the porch had a good laugh, I told myself as I finished climbing in. Overall, I would say this was a success. I looked around the kitchen quickly as I made my way to the front. I needed to be quiet just in case there was still someone sleeping in the house, or for whatever other reason did not hear me enter. I spotted the knife block and pulled one from the center and tucked it into my waistband. While the middle knives were larger, making them harder to conceal, it's easier to overlook one missing. Though, I did need to get the front door open quickly. I glanced through the doorway into the living room. It was also empty. My eyes were drawn to the rifle sitting behind the door. I wish I could hide it before he came in, not that I would be able to take it without them noticing. Just one less gun for them to have, though if I leave it there, he might not be as worried about what I am doing. I need to be able to go off alone. I looked at the knob.
What is taking you so long?
Scruffy's voice boomed from the other side of the door. "The deadbolt needs a key to open. You can climb in through the window, or I can look for the key." I reported the situation.
Find the key.
He barked back. Cool, I thought. I went to the kitchen. I would guess this would be the most common place to have the backup key. I started at the kitchen doorway with the strategy of just opening the drawers. They were furthest from the functional part of the kitchen, so I would assume that these are the junk drawers. Bingo, I said, looking at a revolver peeking out from under a pile of junk mail. I opened the chamber, 5 bullets. I aligned the empty chamber with the barrel, allowing me to leave the safety off. I flicked my wrist to snap the gun together. I looked to make sure I won't be watched through the window. The coast is clear. I exchanged the knife for the gun and placed it back into the block. I continued to rummage through the drawer. It didn't take long for me to come up with 2 sets of keys. I kept one in my pocket. They looked smaller, not like the keys to a front door. The 3rd key on the ring opened the deadbolt.
It's about time.
Scruffy said, bursting into the door.
Did you find anything?
He asked. No, but the first 2 drawers in the kitchen are junk drawers if we need lighters or anything, I said in pure satire. I needed to seem as helpful as possible. Well, there is a rifle behind the door, I said. He stepped aside and shut the door to retrieve the rifle. He smiled, holding it.
Go into the kitchen and fill the bags with all of the unspoiled food,
he said, tossing the bags at my feet. So, he's just going to send me off by myself? What an idiot. I need to get upstairs and look around. I think one of the keys might go to a safe. And if I were a safe, that's where I would be. I picked up the bags and went into the kitchen. I opened the cabinets. They were fairly stocked with food. 1 or 2 houses should have our bags stuffed. After clearing out the non-perishables, I went back into the living room to inquire about looking around upstairs. I was given the green light with a mention of deodorant and jewelry. I walked into the largest bedroom first. I knelt and looked under the bed. Just some slippers. I walked over to the closet and opened the door. I split the clothes in half and shoved them to either side, making it easier to see the safe in the bottom of the closet. It looked like antibiotics and other various medicine. At the back of the safe there was a second gun, a larger pistol, probably a .45. I spent a few minutes to create my bag inside of a bag method. I left the prescriptions and took the antibiotics. I didn't know if someone would be back for those, but I wasn't going to take them. Chapter 12. We searched one more house before we stood close to the street and waited on the other groups. I was feeling fairly confident. The second house had more food than the first, but there was only one gun. Luckily, I was again the only one checking the house, because I found another handgun. I was strategic enough to put mostly canned food in the bag that held the guns. I was sure I would be made to carry the heaviest bag back. It would also keep the gun in my possession the whole time. If either Jessica or Tony did half as well as I did, we might just have a fighting chance. While we didn't exactly know how many people was in the other group, 3 guns added to what we already had would tilt the scales a bit. I don't see anyone openly carrying guns except the guards, or whoever is on night watch. With 1 or 2 more guns we might have the upper hand. Jessica's group joined us next. They also had stuffed 4 bags with what looked like mostly food. I couldn't come straight out and ask how things went while I winked a few times, so I asked. Everything go smooth?
Yeah, we got a surprisingly good haul. Loads of food for everyone.
She said, then locked eyes with me and smiled.
It's so nice to know we can help.
Yeah, I know what you mean. With everything so crazy, it's nice to feel like you can do something good. I mirrored her enthusiasm about being able to help everyone. If I am picking up what she is putting down, then she has found something that will help us get the mall back for the people who want to stay there. This will also ensure our whole group is armed once we get ourselves out of here. Though if she found a gun as well, we might want to comb the area once really well before we set off. Larger rifles would draw attention, and the people in the area seem to like their firearms. But if we stay more along the woods, we shouldn't have to worry about that. I do know I never want to be in this position again, and we have a long walk ahead of us. If we don't have to make a hasty retreat, I think we should ask for some supplies from the sports store. It sure would be a nice thank you. It would also help us as we get further south. I don't think Richmond was really hit. Once we see living animals again, we will be able to sleep outside. Tony's group finally joined our group of 4. The 3 men compared the one-off items they have found. Scruffy showed off his rifle. Tony looked at us, smiled and asked,
Y'all have any luck?
Yeah, we found some good stuff. Looks like we just might be able to contribute after they were so nice to open their shelter to us.
Jessica said. I know she is using code and putting on a show, but this was still entertaining. Jessica is more of a stormy blue sky than a bright sunny day. The optimism pouring out of her would be striking to anyone who knew her. However, it did do the trick. We stood there a few more minutes like we were all just waiting for the bus. My stomach grumbled. I knew this meant it was time for lunch. I looked to the orange smog sky. The light from the sun was slightly west of the sky, looks like just after lunchtime. There couldn't be much more out here they thought we could do. Jessica, Tony, and I were weighted down like pack mules. On the bright side, it was a short walk back to the mall. 15 minutes tops. While I did judge the time the walk would take to get back to the mall correctly, I underestimated how heavy the bags would become along the way. The worst part is I kept thinking that if I dropped a bag, somehow one of the guns inside would rack and fire. I looked over to Tony and Jessica. Neither of them had been stupid enough to try my method. Just as we had made it to the parking lot, I heard a dreaded rip. I put my hand to support the bottom of the front book bag. I think that is where the sound was coming from. I continued to carry the duffel with one hand, thankful that this one did not have any cans. We hurried through the fence and to the door. Scruffy beat on it 4 times, then knocked twice. A secret knock. Possibly the first smart thing I have seen from the group. The door opened seconds later and we were back in the first long hall to the women's locker room. It was like déjà vu standing here. Once the door was shut, without instruction the group started moving toward the shower room.
We are showering first.
Scruffy said, pointing to our suits. Okay, I said. This was perfect. If we could do this silently, we could possibly hide the guns in here. I looked around for cameras as they stepped into the showers. I didn't see any. We should hide anything we are keeping in here, I whispered.
Right, this may be our only chance. A bit further from the action than I would like, but we need to take every opening we have.
Tony agreed. I had the extra bag, so we loaded it. Jessica also found a gun and a handful of firecrackers. I deposited my 3 guns and half of the antibiotics. Tony added a box of 45 ammo and another 45 pistol. He also dropped some thread, a few paper clips, duct tape, a knife, and a small dial-face kitchen timer. I looked at him blankly.
I'll explain later. You two keep a lookout. I'm gonna hide the bag.
Tony said, trotting over to the sink and hoisting himself up. He moved a tile and shoved the bag up. He slid the tile down and joined us again, leaning on the wall, seconds before the water turned off and the 3 men made their way out of the stalls, wrapping towels around their damp bodies.
Get showered,
Scruffy ordered. At this point, I am starting to think he is the leader of the henchmen. It's a good piece of information to have. Historically, on the battlefield, taking down leadership in the ranks greatly weakened the opponent and caused pandemonium within the ranks. Confusion and conflicting orders would cascade across the battlefield. We need to go for the head first, I thought as I stepped into the shower in my radiation suit. I rinsed it first, then stepped out of the water and started the process of peeling off the suit. I had barely began rinsing myself before the water turned off and we were being rushed out. I was pissed, but knew I couldn't show it. I wrapped myself and left my suit in the shower to dry off. I was the last one out. We were instructed to go into the locker room and get something to wear off of the clothing rack. I looked to the bench that lined the wall across from the shower stalls. The bags were already gone. I looked back up and didn't say a word as we started for the locker room. Again, there were clothing racks as soon as we walked in. A few rushed moments later, we were in the hall with the glass roof on our way back to the cafeteria. I looked up at the sky. It was not dark like yesterday. I would say we should be in the clear with the weather tonight. Once we entered the cafeteria, there was a table set up and covered with what I guess were our spoils. Along with Scruffy's rifle, there was a handgun. There is no telling where it fell out of. It would appear they are putting on a show of everything we have found. I'm guessing either the coming scavenging party will be there first, or they are looking for more volunteers.
How did it go?
Alex whispered. Let's get away from the front, I said. Our group moved toward the back of the room. The air was buzzing off the excitement over the food. Things must be a bit rough here. I guess this is a lot of people to feed, especially if you are doing it lunch lady style. They have most likely been eating the same thing over and over again, just like us at the restaurant. There's not many options for food without electricity, I thought. We got 5 guns, and Jess found some firecrackers, I said.
That's awesome.
Alex said.
Can I have everyone's attention, please? Thank you. I would just like to say before we take suggestions for dinner tonight, we should take a moment to thank our visitors for helping to get all of this back here. All reports indicate there are no hostiles in the area, so we can go out more often and bring back more. But to do that, we are going to need more help. I want you to think about that tonight, while you celebrate our victory.
The guard said as he took a lap around the table.
Is it just me or did that sound a bit more like a threat?
Tony asked. The guard continued on in the background.
Thank you for listening to Episode 4 of The Nuclear Deep End, an EMP Apocalypse episode series. Episode 5 is under construction. Like and subscribe so you don't miss it. Copyright Firefly 2023. Voiced by AI.